The Milwaukee Bucks are the definition of you really don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. This is a team that just 4 years ago won an NBA championship led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, a player that at the time people thought was the best player in the league, and rightfully so. I thought that shit too. But now here we are 4 years later. Giannis is still in Milwaukee, Drew is in Boston, a two-time champion now, and Chris Middleton is in Washington with Jordan Poole and Alex Sarr. My goodness, what a difference 4 years makes.
Hey, hey,
on that beat. Nope.
You know, there are too many people to blame for the Bucks' current situation right now, but let's start off with the obvious. What the fuck were they doing trading Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard? Now, in the moment, this was met with so much praise. Hell, I even praised the move because I really looked at what Dame did in his last year in Portland, and I thought, man, he can replicate that with Giannis. They would seem to be such a great fit. I mean, Dame is one of the best three-point shooters, not only in the league, but in the history of basketball, and Giannis' weakness obviously is three-point shooting, but he loves to attack the interior. So a pick and roll duo with Dame and Giannis seemed like a match in heaven, really. And unfortunately, that shit went south immediately. Damian Lillard last year, I don't know if it was the divorce, being in a new location, or probably even both, that just affected him in a way that we have never seen before. The guy was truly the definition of inconsistent. He shot 43% from the field and 35% from three. He hasn't been that inefficient since 2018. And mind you, he was coming off of a season that was probably his best statistical year yet of his career. The man averaged 32 points a game and shot 46, 37, and 90 shooting splits. I mean, he was not terrible last year, but for the standards that we gave him and the Milwaukee Bucks, he was not very good. And then mind you, it wasn't like Giannis was playing bad. Giannis played perfectly fine last year. You could argue one of the better years of his career, as he became the first player in NBA history to average 30 points on 60% shooting from the field. But honestly, as disappointing as the offense was for Damian Lillard last year, the real problem for the Bucks was defense. Oh my god, this nigga can't guard even his own shadow if he wanted to. And we all knew Dame was a bad defender, but the hole that Drew Holiday left on that perimeter, it really was never filled with anybody of competency. Combine that with Brook Lopez not being the same rim protector as he used to be, and Giannis not really being peak Giannis defensively anymore, they just couldn't cover all those holes on the perimeter and wing. And speaking of the wing, that now brings us to Chris Middleton, another piece of the big three that won the championship in 2021. Middleton used to be one of the better wings and I would say underrated players in the NBA over the last 6 to 7 seasons. He was truly like a jack of all trades, but really a master of none. He was a good and efficient scorer, but not a great one. He was a good playmaker, but not a great one. He was a solid defender, but not a great one. And he wasn't someone who depended on his athleticism because the guy could really never even jump over a phone book, to be quite honest with you. His IQ and skill is truly what carried him to reaching those heights back in the day. But unfortunately, due to age and injury, Middleton was a shell of what he used to be last season and this year. And speaking of injuries, that's exactly what killed their season last year. Giannis gets hurt at the end of the regular season and they go into another postseason without him. I mean, Damian Lillard tried his best. He had a couple of fake games in the first round against the Pacers, but of course they lose in 6 games. The season was just an abject failure, and when you throw in the fact that their coaching situation was just a complete mess, it only gets worse for them. Adrian Griffin had some off the court issues that a lot of people tend to forget about, and as far as his coaching on the court, he didn't really do too much of that despite what the record will tell you. And out of all the fucking replacements, they went to go and get mid-season Doc fucking Rivers. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think Doc is a bad coach, but out of all the replacements for a team like the Milwaukee Bucks in the position that they are in, with a prime Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard, what made them think that this was a great coaching hire? I will never know. I mean, if Adrian Griffin and Doc Rivers were the best options post Coach Bud, then you probably shouldn't have fired Coach Bud in the first place. Now I know a lot of things when it comes to coaching, it is hindsight to look at the results rather than what's actually happening in real time. But unfortunately for the Bucks, they just swung and missed when it came to their coaching hires, and the results only validate that. And now that brings us to what's happening this season, because this year has been a complete disaster. I would categorize it truly as a roller coaster, because they have definitely had their ups, like when they won the in-season tournament against the Oklahoma City Thunder in the final game. The Bucks were on a crazy roll at that time. Giannis looked unstoppable, and Damian Lillard actually looked like he knew how to play basketball again. But since then, the season has just completely fell apart. They've been pretty mediocre. Doc Rivers, every time I look at him, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Damian Lillard has suffered some knick-knack injuries along with Giannis as well, and his inconsistencies have still been shown. Bobby Portis was playing trash even though the nigga was using steroids, which now has led to him being suspended. And when we're talking about the bigs, let's not forget Brook Lopez continuing to show his age. The Bucks season was a disaster from hell, and the front office's smart idea was to trade Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. I mean, I could have told you that was a bad decision from the jump, and my goodness, it has been so bad since then. As Kuzma, since he's gotten to the Milwaukee Bucks, is averaging 13 points on 42% shooting from the field, 29% shooting from 3, and 67% at the free throw line. What the fuck was the point of that trade? Absolutely nothing. And to make matters worse, because it can't just stop there, now Damian Lillard is out indefinitely due to blood clots. I'm wishing a real true speedy recovery for Damian Lillard, because blood clots are really no joke. That can be a career-ending thing right there. But it truly is just a symbol on what has been such a tragic and awful season for the Milwaukee Bucks. And a lot of people look at the Bucks and say, hey, they swung for the fences going for Damian Lillard, and it just hasn't worked out. It's been a disappointment. We've seen that happen in NBA history before. And I do say yes to that, but we've never seen a disappointment on this level. These are two players that when they came together, they were all NBA level players. People were comparing them to Kobe and fucking Shaq. Now, of course, nobody actually thought they would be Kobe and Shaq, but that just goes to show what the expectations were for these two. To be great all NBA level players and compete for championships while they still can. And since they've teamed together, whether it's due to injuries or poor performance, they have not reached those expectations at all. They truly haven't even come close, which leads me to why I said what I said in the beginning of the video. The Bucks did not appreciate what they had in the beginning. And a lot of that doesn't just fall on the shoulders of the Bucks front office, but it does fall on the shoulders of Giannis. Giannis is the one who pushed for the Jrue Holiday trade. He may not have known Holiday was going to be the piece move to get a guy like Damian Lillard, but he knew that something was going to be done. And if you're making a major move for a player of that level, it was either going to be Holiday or Middleton being moved, if not even both. And when Giannis went out there and doing interviews talking about he may leave the team if they don't do something drastic because he wants to win a championship, these are the moves that the Bucks had to make. My only issue with all these moves though is that, for one, even though Giannis is pushing for it, the front office has the final say. So that's still on y'all. And secondly, as bad as Jrue Holiday was in so many playoffs, let's be real here, Chris Middleton was the player that I think they should have considered moving first before Jrue Holiday. Jrue was the all-star caliber player at that time. Middleton was already missing games due to injury and was already a shell of his former self. And considering that what you got for him now that you've traded him too late was Kyle Kuzma versus what you got for Jrue at that time being Damian Lillard, I do think it's safe to say that this was a mistake. Because if you traded Chris Middleton probably a year or two earlier, who knows what was on the board? Maybe you still could have got Damian Lillard, because as bad as Jrue Holiday was on that team in the playoffs all those years, even when they won the championship, offensively he was so inept for most of that championship run. We can't just deny the fact that defensively he brought an identity on that perimeter. The Bucks won their championship and built their culture over the last 5 to 6 seasons off of defense. Even before they got Jrue Holiday in 2019 and 2020, they had Eric Bledsoe in the backcourt, who was also a great defender in his own right. To leave that and get Damian Lillard and not even bring in a substitute for that perimeter to fill in the hole, or at least attempt to fill in that hole that Jrue Holiday left, I thought was very negligent. It's putting a lot of faith in Giannis and Damian Lillard to really step up and be the offensive pieces that they needed them to be to overcome that. And on one hand, I understand that these are two all-time great players in their prime, but on the other hand, even if Damian Lillard lived up to the hype shape and played to his capabilities the year prior, when they were to go into the playoffs and run into these elite offensive teams like the Boston Celtics, Cleveland Cavaliers, New York Knicks, those series are going to be a way bigger dogfight than you're expecting because you just can't guard anybody. They would have literally needed Damian Lillard and Giannis to be Pete, Kobe, and Shaq, and they just are not that. Even the offensive fit between these two, it really isn't as seamless as we thought because Giannis is not a pick and roll big. So at the end of the day, when you look at Damian Lillard and Giannis, they have to go down as one of the most disappointing duos in the history of the league. They're not even going to get out of the first round again this season due to injuries, just like last year. And with the Eastern Conference even in the middle of the pack filling in with teams like the Pacers, Knicks, and Pistons, it looks like they've really left the Bucks behind. I don't know where they go from here. I love Giannis. He's my favorite player in the league. But unfortunately, buddy, it looks like you're done.